Welcome to Straight Talk Tuesday for June 16th, 2020. As many companies are bringing employees back to work, we're going to be discussing the rehiring process and how it relates to 401k eligibility. My name is Rich Myers, and I'm a retirement plan advisor at Retirement Plans, Inc. And this presentation has been put together in conjunction with Brent Bowers, another retirement plan advisor at Retirement Plans, Inc. On today's agenda, we'll be covering the general rules of thumb as it relates to 401k eligibility and the rehiring process. We'll then get into the specifics of rehiring someone who's already eligible for the plan and rehiring someone who hasn't yet met the eligibility requirements. We'll finish up the presentation with some case studies which cover a few different scenarios that you may be running into. A quick disclaimer, today's presentation is for informational purposes only, should not be construed as legal or tax advice. We recommend that you consult with your legal plan documents and service providers. Starting off with the general rules of thumb of rehiring, you should always be following your specific plan's adoption agreement and other legal plan documents when you're rehiring someone and looking at their 401k eligibility. But in general, rehired employees are never to be treated as new employees for eligibility purposes, and prior employment hours and years of service should count towards eligibility and vesting credits. Lastly, we recommend that you start with the assumption that the rehired employee will be automatically eligible to participate. Always verify, but start with the assumption that they will be eligible, because 95% of the time that will be the case. Now let's get into the different scenarios when rehiring employees. The first scenario would be rehiring someone that's already met the eligibility requirements. So if that's the case, that employee will be immediately eligible to start contributing upon rehire. They do not have to wait until the next entry date, and previous years of service will count towards their vesting schedule. However, if someone is being rehired that has not yet met the eligibility requirements, any previous service should count towards their future eligibility when they return. Also, quick note here, they don't have to be employed at the beginning or the end of their eligibility computation period to satisfy their eligibility requirements. Also, when looking at service for vesting purposes, their original hire date and service will count. And then lastly, employees who don't meet eligibility requirements in the initial computation period should be governed by your plan's specific adoption agreement. Now let's move into some case studies. And for simplicity purposes, we're going to assume for today's examples, we have a 1 year and 1,000 hour eligibility requirement to join the plan, and the plan will have quarterly entry dates. So that's going to be January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, and October 1st. The first case studies we're going to look at will be for somebody that's already met the eligibility requirements. And so scenario 1, John was hired in January 15th of 2018 and was let go March 10th of 2020. So we're assuming here that from January of 2018 to 2019, he met the eligibility requirements and was able to join the plan. He was subsequently let go, but the company plans to rehire John in July of 2020. The verdict on this one is John would be immediately eligible to rejoin the plan with the first payroll after his rehire. That's because he was already eligible when he was terminated the first time, and he's now come back on, so he should be immediately let into the plan. Scenario 2, John was again hired on January 15th of 2018 and let go on the same March 10th, 2020, and the company plans this time to rehire John July 30th, 2020. But only part-time. And I've put this scenario in here because it does not relate to his eligibility, but it might relate to his vesting. So the verdict on this one is John is immediately eligible to rejoin the plan with the first payroll after rehire, same as scenario 1. However, because he's only part-time now, he might not reach the 1,000 hours necessary to get service credit for vesting purposes. Again, we should always be looking at the adoption agreement of your specific plan, but most plans require an employee to work 1,000 hours in a plan year in order to receive a vesting credit. Our next set of case studies will be looking at employees who have not yet met the eligibility requirements. So looking at scenario 1, Mark is hired on May 15th, 2019 and was let go March 10th, 2020. But during his initial hire period, he did complete 1,000 hours of service. So he did not meet his 1-year requirement because he hasn't been there for that full year yet, but he did complete 1,000 hours. Now the company plans to rehire Mark June 15th of 2020. So because of this, the verdict would be Mark has met his 1 year and 1,000 hour requirement to become eligible for the plan as of May 15th, 2020. And he will become eligible during the next entry date for the plan. We have quarterly entry dates, so his next entry date will be July 1st, 2020. Now, let's look at scenario 2. Very similar with a slight change. Same hire date for Mark, same termination. He worked 1,000 hours during that initial period of service, but this time he's rehired on August 15th, 2020. Now, where this differs is he would have passed his initial entry date of July 1st. So the verdict on this one, Mark has met 1 year and 1,000 hour requirement as of May 15th, and he's passed his initial entry date, which would have been July 1st. Because of this, he's able to join the plan immediately with his first payroll back into the plan. We're going to continue on with an additional case study for employees who have not yet met the eligibility requirements with scenario number 3. In this scenario, Kevin was hired October 15th, 2019 and was let go March 10th, 2020. He hasn't yet completed 1,000 hours of service during his initial hire period, but he's then rehired September 15th, 2020. So we have 2 different verdicts on this depending on what happens between September 15th and October 15th. So verdict number 1, Kevin has until October 15th, that would be his full 1 year, to complete 1,000 hours of service. If he does this, he becomes eligible for the plan at the next entry date. And so for this particular plan with quarterly entry dates, he would become eligible to join January 1st of 2021 because on October 15th, he would have completed 1 year of service and 1,000 hours, so he becomes eligible at the next entry date. Alternatively, let's assume that Kevin doesn't complete his 1,000 hours before October 15th. Then we have to visit the adoption agreement to see what does our specific plan say. Typically, he must either attain 1,000 hours in a rolling year period, or some plans will say that he needs to attain 1,000 hours in the next plan year, which usually runs January 1st to December 31st. Again, we highly recommend you visit your adoption agreement or speak with your third-party administrator and advisor to figure out your plan specifics. If you have questions about your retirement plan or individual investments, you can contact myself or Brent Bowers at Retirement Plans, Inc. Thanks for joining us for this session of Straight Talk Tuesday. We hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you.